Now, many people in our world have a wrong understanding of the Council of Nicaea. The reason people have the wrong idea is because they've gotten their information principally from that one inestimable authority, Dan Brown, author of the Da Vinci Code. So, the Council of Nicaea figures in the Da Vinci Code, and virtually everything that Dan Brown says about it is wrong. So I tell my students at Chapel Hill that if they want to know about the history of the Middle Ages, the way to learn about that is not to watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And if you want to know about the history of early Christianity, the way to do that is not to read Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. So, according to Dan Brown, the Council of Nicaea, he says all sorts of things about the Council of Nicaea. Everything he says about it virtually everything is wrong. There's a common view, for example, that he popularized it, but people had this view before he came along, that the Council of Nicaea is when Christians decided which books would be in the New Testament. Where did you finally get a canon of the New Testament? Who decided those books? Oh, it was at the Council of Nicaea. Wrong! They didn't even talk about it. It wasn't an issue at the Council of Nicaea. The first person to come up with our list of 27 books of the New Testament was somebody who was at the Council of Nicaea, but he didn't come up with his list of books for another 40 years. So it was a man named Athanasius. The Council of Nicaea had nothing to do with the formation of the New Testament canon. The other thing in Dan Brown's book is that what Dan Brown indicates is that at the Council of Nicaea, they were deciding whether Jesus was the Son of God or not, and they took a vote, and it was a very close vote. So Jesus barely made it in as the Son of God. The reality is the Council of Nicaea was not a council to decide whether Jesus was the Son of God. Everybody at the Council of Nicaea agreed Jesus was the Son of God. The question was, in what sense is he the Son of God? Is he the Son of God who was made by God in eternity past to create the world, or who's a subordinate deity, or is he the Son of God who's actually equal with God who existed forever? Which is it? This was the debate at the Council of Nicaea. A vote was taken. There were over 300 bishops from around the world who came together for this council. This is the first of 7 ecumenical councils of the early Christianity. In the early years, there were 7 church-wide councils that made decisions about theology and practical matters for Christianity. And this is the first, the Council of Nicaea. This council was actually called by the Roman Emperor Constantine. The Roman Emperor Constantine had converted to Christianity in the year 312, and now, 13 years later, he has called this council because he wants Christians to work out this problem. Constantine the emperor was not a theologian, and he actually didn't care which side won this argument. He thought it was a trivial matter that really didn't signify for anything, but he knew that the church was split over it. And Constantine did not want a split church. He had affirmed Christianity in part because Christianity could provide the unity that he needed, the cultural unity that he wanted in his empire. But if Christianity is going to be used as a unifying force for the diverse cultures of the Roman Empire, if Christianity is going to be the unifier, it has to be united. It has to be unified. And so, solving this problem was important for Constantine. So he called together all these bishops. They came to the city of Nicaea, and they debated, and they took a vote, but it wasn't a close vote. In the end, after these 300 bishops got together, basically, it was just 2 or 3 guys who refused to sign off on the statement that resulted. Arius lost the debate. Arius lost the debate. The side that supported Alexander won the debate, and it was decided at that point that Christ is not a subordinate divinity who is less powerful than God the Father, who came into existence at some point in the past. Christ is fully equal with God. He has the same power, the same grandeur, the same honor, the same everything as God the Father, and he always existed. There never was a time before which he existed. So there have been lots of arguments over the years for why it has to be that way in Christian theology. Let me just give you one kind of interesting argument for it. If you say, no, I can't start it that way. I have to start it like this. If something is perfect, it can't change. Because if it's perfect and it changes, then it changes either to the better or the worse. If it changes to the better, then it means before that it wasn't as good as it could have been. If it changes to the worse, then it's no longer perfect. So for something that is perfect cannot change. Okay? That's the argument. If you say that God created Christ the Son at some point in eternity past, then you're saying that at that point, God became the Father. But if he became the Father, then he changed. And you can't change if you're perfect. So Christ had always to exist. And God was always the Father. That's the argument. See how it works? It's kind of clever. So, right. So the Council of Nicaea, 300 bishops, over 300 bishops, they take a vote. The emperor was in charge of this council. He ruled over it. The vote ended up going against Arius. What was that? Yeah, the vote ended up going against Arius. And so this was a significant moment in the history of Christian theology. The Holy Spirit was admitted as being part of this Trinity at Nicaea, but his status wasn't talked about very much. It was only in later decades that theologians worked out the implications of what happened at the Council of Nicaea, and that the Spirit was thrown in, and you ended up with a Trinity in which you've got three persons, all of which are equally God. The three persons are distinct from one another. They are three different persons. All of them are equally God, but there's only one God. This is the resultant doctrine of the Trinity. So there's only one God, manifest in three persons, all of whom are fully God, all of whom are equal, but there's not three gods, there's only one God. Now, if you say that doesn't make sense, you're right. It doesn't make sense if you're trying to think through it logically, because there's not a logical solution to this. It's understood to be a mystery. It's a mystery because you can't really figure it out. People always have ways of trying to figure this thing out, but every example you use is problematic because there's nothing like it. So people say things like, well, it's like H2O. You know, it can be ice, it can be water, it can be steam, but it's all H2O. Yeah, but that's modalism. That's God sometimes being Father, Son, or Spirit. But he's not, so it's not ice, water, and the same molecules are not ice, water, and steam at the same time. The Trinity all exists at the same time as three distinct persons, yet there's only one God. But Christians were insistent. They were not polytheists, they were monotheists, but God is manifest in three persons. And so it goes. Let me say something about the residual effect. I'm going to leave a little bit more time for questions since we only have an hour this morning. So Jesus by the Council of Nicaea ended up being God. Not a subordinate God, but God from eternity.